Ranking Trump's and Harris's most damaging economic proposals so far, a list by the economist Brian Riedl. Number 1 most damaging is Trump's 10 to 20% universal global tariffs plus the 60% tariff on China. Absolutely, this would entirely disrupt our macroeconomy across the board. Higher effective tax rates on the middle class and the poor, totally disrupting our supply chains. Potentially in a similar ballpark as the COVID supply chain disruptions. And absolutely inflationary. 2, he puts Trump's massive deportations. In my opinion, I think this one is actually the number 1 largest issue. We're talking millions of people, and it's a policy choice we've done before. We did this back during the Great Depression in the 1930s, and this paper studied it and found out it harmed domestic workers and domestic wages. Again, a major supply chain disruption, increasing inflation. Number 3, he puts Harris's food/rent price controls. The little asterisk there, where Brian accurately notes that the Harris campaign has been particularly cagey in terms of the detail. For instance, the campaign uses the word price gouging, not price control. Price control is undoubtedly really bad, but price gouging is not very well defined. If it's simply antitrust, it might even be a good thing, but if it's anything closer to price controls, I agree it would be a bad thing. Number 4, both letting Social Security and Medicare shortfalls soar towards insolvency and deficits jump towards $4 to $5 trillion every year. The current Social Security plan is going to run into issue by the end of the decade. That means we either have to raise taxes or cut benefits or some combination there between, and neither campaign is saying a darn thing about it at this point. Number 5, Trump threatening the Federal Reserve central bank's independence. Research has shown that the less independent a central bank is, over on the left side of this horizontal axis, the higher the average inflation rate the country experiences. This is because maintaining stable prices requires difficult decisions that harm politicians in the short run, and they constantly have an incentive to lower rates more than they ought to be. My worry here is that it is difficult to create and maintain high-quality professional economic institutions, and replacing them with individuals who are knee-jerk and loyal partisans will have major long-run negative consequences for the American macroeconomy. Next, we get to a list of things that are significantly less serious, but still important, and where there probably is a lot more room to disagree among various economists. Number 6, we have Harris's wealth tax on wealthy families. Wealth taxes are notoriously difficult to implement. Here's a very recent report from the IMF on how to tax wealth. I highly recommend reading through it. A lot of wealth is highly mobile, making it very difficult for governments to efficiently collect taxes on it. They conclude that one of the lessons is that policy concerns about wealth inequality does not imply that government should use net wealth taxes. Improving capital income taxes tend to be both more equitable and more efficient compared to replacing them with net wealth taxes. To complicate the story, the IMF still says there is room for a net wealth tax if applied only to very high wealth individuals, and there's a lot of care that needs to go into designing it. Rather, concerns about intergenerational wealth means we need to heavily reform the inheritance tax. The efficiency costs of inheritance tax are relatively modest. So rather than increasing rates, such as 0.67 and 8 argue, it may be better to reform the tax code to increase collection, limiting offshore tax havens, for example. Number 9, Trump's ending the taxation of Social Security benefits. As we say, Social Security right now needs more funds, not less. Plus, this tax break only goes to very high income. Number 10, Riedl says the $25,000 first-time home buyer credit subsidy. My personal opinion is I'm a little more sympathetic to this. I had a first-time home buyer credit when I bought a house, and as long as it's accompanied with large increases in supply, this may be okay. However, I think Brian's quite worried about the deficit, so I see where he's coming from. Number 11, both ending taxes on tips. I agree, this is no good. If we want to help people who are working in the service industry, we need to give tax breaks for everybody, not just those who happen to work for tips versus those who do not. But it's a pretty small potatoes problem. Number 12, significantly hiking the child tax credit. Both candidates have this on their platform. I 100% disagree with this. I recognize Brian is more concerned about the deficit, and this would increase the deficit. In my opinion, the child tax credit is worth raising taxes for. In 2021, when we had the expanded child tax credit, the child poverty rate fell by half. Investing in children so that they have the same opportunities as everyone else, they work higher paying jobs, and end up paying more taxes in the long run. What do you think of this list? Let me know in the comments.